أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم محمد وعلى إترة الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وأجل فرجهم أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Alaikum assalam rahmatullah.
Welcome again to another show of Real Talk. And this week we have Jamila Devji with us. Assalamu alaikum, Jamila Bai.
Alaikum salam. How are you, Masmaba?
Alhamdulillah. How are you?
Good, alhamdulillah.
Thank you so much for agreeing to join us on Real Talk. Inshallah, what I'll do is I'll just step back and let you introduce yourself. So yeah, Bismillah.
Okay. Well, I was born and lived in Dar most of my life. Well, not most of my life, a lot of my life before I moved to Canada. I think the most of the life is here now. I'm a mother of 3 children and a grandmother of 5.
MashaAllah.
We moved to Canada in early 1976. So yes, we've been here for more than 40 years. When I came here, I had trained to be a Montessori teacher for little kids. But when we came to Canada, there was no Montessori here at that time. So I had to change careers, went back to school. And
Wow.
though my children were little, actually I had Yasin already when I came here, and then Rizwan was born in a year's time. So I went back to school and trained as a medical lab technician. And I worked in a medical laboratory for most of my life while I lived here. I also managed and looked after selling Islamic books from home. I had a company, Mehrab Publishers. And
Wow.
My late father-in-law is an integral part of the company. He used to help me because there was no bookstore at the then mosques here at that time.
So at that time, sorry, I'm going to keep interrupting you.
Yes,
So
yes,
I
no
apologize
problem.
for
That's
that.
fine.
At that time, there couldn't have been that many Muslims, let alone Shias there, right?
There were not that many, but because of just before we arrived in 1976, the Uganda exodus had happened already. So there was a community here already. With first of all, there was people from Dar es Salaam that had moved, Dar es Salaam from Tanzania. I think one of the first immigrants was Marhum Mahmoud Habib and them, and then there were others that moved as well from Dar es Salaam, and after that came the exodus from Uganda. So there
Yeah.
was a sizable community, not very big, but adequate enough to have the madrasa had already started, and the mosque programs were going on in rented halls.
Okay.
That was right when we came. But
And
after we moved to our own mosque, and this is when we started the bookshop, and we used to sell the Islamic books there.
so you obviously saw that there was a niche there which needed to be taken care of, and you did that.
Yes, yes, and
Alhamdulillah.
yeah,
Alhamdulillah.
alhamdulillah. And so pretty much involved in looking after um, the book business and all. And then my life has been quite busy with my late husband's illnesses and his accidents and things.
So before he became ill, before we go into that, at the beginning, I think there was he had the same sort of vision that you did in sort of looking for what was needed by the community and then trying to provide that. I think that that's one of the things that I most admire about yourself and what I've heard about your late husband as well. And he set up a camp, right, for the youth.
So it started when he was we got involved in the madrasas that had already been established here in Toronto, and the one we got involved in was called the Eastern Madrasa, which was at that time run by the late Ada Ali Raza Mullah Nanji. And we joined in, he joined in the administrative team, and I became a teacher. And we started, working with the madrasa. And our children were young. We used to take them with us every week. When he went to work, when he was working here, he used to meet up with his friends, the people that he worked with, and some of them were from the West Indies, Jamaican. They would have what he noticed
Oh, we seemed, sorry, you cut out for a minute.
But like only summer, and after that there wouldn't be anything else after that. Like they didn't have any clue of what their name meant, what what the kalima was. um, they were Muslims in name only, literally. So at that point, he used to think that if this stays on, and we as a community, if we don't develop and do not move forward, teaching our children, giving them the right tools, then who knows, if they don't understand the religion, one day they may come that they will be Muslims in name only. So he very he started working very hard, and he got into the madrasa administrative system until he became the principal. Then he went on to become the chairman of the IEB at Nasimco. But his vision was always to make things better for the children, so they would learn Islam the proper way and they would carry it forward in their lives. One of the things that happened at that time was he um, there was an Imam Zamana Trust in London, and they had started something like, not a camp, but what they started was a full-time course for the children for about a week-long course. And they would hold these at either an Islamic center. By this time we already had our Bayview Mosque. So he got this idea that taking the children, keeping them in an environment where they wouldn't be exposed to anything. Of course, at that time there was only TV and newspapers, there wasn't anything else, no social media. But keeping them away, taking them away from their parents to a secluded environment where they were taught all this, for 7 days, eating, sleeping, drink, whatever they were doing, they were taught Islam. And that would kind of help when they went on back home, and they would carry some of these habits with them. So such, from there were
But I think
born.
the other thing I think his vision was to make it fun so that
Yeah.
the children actually wanted to
Yeah.
learn.
So the first one was not that much fun, but after that, him and his committee decided to hold these camps on a regular basis, whereby they would make it fun. So they would take the children out for a week to a cottage area where there would be a lakeside, there would be pools, there would be swimming, there would be kayaking, there would be canoeing, and football fields, everything. So pleasure mixed with learning, whereby the children would come back home after a week and carry a lot of the good habits that they had developed during this time. And one of them was, because it was during summer, salat time was very early, 3:30 in the morning, and they would come home and wake their parents up at 3:30, telling them to wake up for salat at 3:30. And these parents were like, God, it's not even Qaza yet. Why are you waking us up? But
How
so
how old were your children then at that time?
my children were not that old. So they would have been early teens. I would think Yasin and Rizwan would be early teens. I don't think that they were that
And this
old.
camp and this camp was specifically for what age group?
So the camp was for teenagers from 13 and up.
So
I
you're
think it
going
was
to
16 and up before. So it has developed through the years, so many years of that, because then, things evolved so much after that with the
yeah.
camp as well.
I'm just thinking from the perspective of I think a lot of the times we as parents or we as community members um, we sit there and we complain about things not happening in the community. We complain about the environment that our kids are growing up in or things that are happening around us, but we don't actually do anything about it. And I think this is one of the greatest lessons that you can actually learn from this is, you know what, there's a need there. You've identified it. Instead of expecting someone else to do it, let's just get up and do something. And I think that's really powerful.
Yeah. And he had a lot of help. His the committee members that he worked with, they helped him. We even had cooks come with us for the whole week. 4 cooks were taken on a full-time basis to come and give them food that they would like. In fact, a lot of times when they came back home, their parents would start complaining, "Oh, our children are putting on weight from these camps. You're feeding them too much, you know." So, but I think it was really, really important for him to do this. And after he passed away, my children also decided that they would like to do something in his memory. So we continued with these camps for a while, boys and girls. These were above, I think it was above 16, 14 and 16. I'm not sure even right now at this age at what we had. We would take them out for a week, again with speakers. And so this went on until all my children were married and moved away. And then I was left to do this by myself. And without the manpower of a family helping you, it was difficult. This evolved into then with me taking on more help and doing mother-daughter retreats, weekend retreats. First, we tried them on a weekly basis. Then we did them on weekend retreats. And then again, these evolved into the women's retreats now, which I hold every year under the
Again, I think what's so powerful here is that you didn't stop. You know, your children were helping you. You continued the legacy after your husband passed away. But then you didn't stop. Even when your kids got married and moved away, you tried different ways. And then, like you said, it evolved. It went into mother and daughter. And then now it's a woman's retreat, which continues every year. So, you know, alhamdulillah, it's amazing that you continued that legacy.
Yeah, yes. I think it's one of those things that we really wanted to do in his name, because he had such a passion for this. And one of the things that we wanted continuing in his name was to do, these camps. So I think, that carried on. And today we have the Al Zahra retreats that we do every year for the women now. So, yeah.
Alhamdulillah. So if we go back a little bit and talk about your husband's sort of journey and what happened.
There's a lot of internet
There is, isn't there?
phone that's giving all the noise. I don't know what it is.
I'm just going to move slightly. Is that a little bit better?
There is a lot of noise coming through when you're speaking. I don't know. Is it my phone that's making the noise as well?
I don't know. I'm trying to move into a different place to see if it makes any difference to me. Is that better?
Yeah, a little bit. I've turned everything off here, so, but it's still, I think very, very choppy.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to come here because the internet's making a lot of noise there. Okay. That's much better.
I'm gone.
Sorry.
I think it's the internet.
There's too much noise.
There is.
Okay,
Yeah.
Jamila bhai?
Gee, I'm here.
I think it's at your end. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I can't see myself, or I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I can't see you anymore.
Okay.
I think maybe if you move
why
from
don't
where you
I
are?
log out and log in again? Would that make a difference? Can I do that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can try.
Okay.
Noise is coming from here. The noise is from the UK side. Is your internet? Can I try doing it on hotspot?
Yeah.
Try hotspot because. Sorry, just give us just a couple of minutes just to sort out the noise problem, and inshallah we will be back with Jamila bhai as she's logging back on. No idea. PM.
What's the end? 2G or 5G? What's the end? 2G or 5G? 2G. Try using 5G.
Which is this one?
Yeah.
Network.
GUX.
Huh?
GUX.
GUX.
KTY.
KTY.
QY.
Sorry, I'll clip them on. Sorry. Will it work upstairs?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that seems a little bit better. Inshallah, once Jamila bhai joins us, then we can continue again.
Can you see me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
That sounds a lot clearer now.
Can you
Is it
hear
better
me?
if you went? Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, sorry. Let's go back to, okay, so do you want to talk about a little bit about your late husband's journey?
Yeah. So my husband used to work in a factory where they made plastic and foam containers for, if you've been, you've been to Toronto, you've seen the McDonald and the Tim Horton containers where they have a plastic, they have a foam cup and they have a plastic lining on top. So he used to be working in the laboratory there as a supervisor, as a plant chemist. And in 1987, there was an accident. There was an explosion at the factory where he worked. Though he was not involved with working with the machines, but he had started, very early on uh, at the bottom of the pole, totem pole at the factory that he worked for. He started working as a security guard and then a, forklifter and garbage collector. So he built his way up and he knew how to run the machines. And this day on December 9th, as he was walking through from his laboratory to get his, go for his coffee break, he was asked by one of the technicians who was short staffed to help him hook the machine up. And as he helped him hook the machine up, there was the temperature reading on the machine was wrong. There was, something wrong with it. And there was a band of hot and cold plastic liquid that met at one point, which caused an explosion. That explosion that happened was that there was a metal rim around that plastic that pipe that was holding the plastic. And as it exploded, the metal part caught him on his left arm and ripped his left arm off. And the hot plastic uh, poured all over him. He got third-degree burns, and he was very badly burnt, and they couldn't save his arm. His arm had to be amputated at that point. He was quite ill. Um, so, sorry, just a minute. And so that was a long way to recovery again for him from this
So
accident.
he actually lost his whole arm, his whole left arm.
His whole left arm was ripped off, yes, by the machine.
Wow.
That explosion that happened was so severe that it just ripped his arm off. Just give me a second, okay? I think that there's some disturbance caused by my phone as well, and resting on things. Okay. So yeah, and so it was a long way to recovery from that. He was taken into rehab because they had to teach him how to live with one arm, to manage everyday life, to and it was a challenge.
Again,
Uh,
that must have been quite tough on you and the children as well, because obviously,
it was very, yeah.
emotionally, it must have been tough for him and for you guys as well.
It was one of the first incidents in our life that that happened. My son Yasin was about 12 years old. Shaista was only 5 at that time. Yeah, Rizwan was about 10 years old. And yes, it was a very traumatic experience for all of us. I had never, up till that point, I had never really driven on the highways here. Now I had to go visit him in the hospital, go through to, drive on the highways. Then he was taken to a rehab center where he lived there for the weekdays, and he would come home for the weekends. He was allowed to come home, and where he lived in the rehab, they had to teach him how to live life again. So again, they tried to give him a prosthetic arm, but the amount of arm that was left, in fact the bone was so less that the only prosthetic arm they could give him was mechanical. They couldn't even give him an electrical arm, to go about. So he had to start learning to live life all over again with one arm, go back to work and work with that one arm. But the thing about him was that he was very positive and very, very brave. He never ever faltered. He never let life take the better of him, even though he, had gone through such a big trauma in his life. He accepted it. When he was asked, in the hospital, because the rehab where he was, there were a lot of patients who were amputees. And at one point, the nurse asked him why he wouldn't even grieve about his arm, and he said, "Well, it's not mine. It was given to me by Allah, my God. And
Mashallah.
if Allah wants to take something away from me, then it is His right to do so."
Wow.
So
Mashallah, that's amazing.
yeah. So Alhamdulillah, and he coped well, and he learned how to cope very well with whatever he was doing. Um, Unfortunately, they say lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place, but it did. So but what happened also was that in between his first accident with his arm and his second accident where he fell down, and because of his imbalance, he couldn't balance himself. He was in a parking lot, he fell down, hurt his head, and had a head injury.
Wow.
This head injury lasted in him, first of all, being in a coma for 6 months, sorry, 3 months. And second of all, he lost the ability on the right side of his body.
So hang on,
So,
let me just get this clear. So he had an accident at work where he lost his left arm, and then he went to rehab, and he sort of got back to normality as much as possible.
yeah,
He started working again,
yes, he did. He went
and
to the
then
same
how
place.
much later did he then fall? How long after?
So about 9 years later, he
Okay. So just as
9 years.
life was getting normal, well, as much as it could,
So
then
87 was when he had his arm accident, and
Mhm.
96, June 1st was he had his second accident where he fell down, and he had this head injury. He was in a coma, and when he woke up, he was like a baby because he didn't have a left arm. The right side of his body was paralyzed. So it was like a baby waking up. He couldn't even hold his neck up. He had to be taught how to hold his neck up. He had to be taught how to sit, from sleeping to sitting. But because now he was totally disabled, he needed all the help that he could, that, we had to give. If he was lying down, we would have to help him sit up. If he was sitting up, we would have to help him stand up. Um,
because the side that was good was the side that had lost the
yeah,
arm.
yes.
Okay.
The
And how
side.
old were your children at this time?
How old were my children? They were all still. They were not in university yet, but they were still young. 10 years later, I would say.
So about in the early 20s, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. And then
And so, but what happened was that in between the two accidents was something. His became ill, something that came to light that he had been carrying with him, an illness that he was carrying with him, something that was rare. On his birth, he had a condition whereby his portal vein got blocked. In Africa, a lot of babies, or I don't know, maybe even here, you get an infection in the umbilicus. The infection in the umbilicus caused his portal vein to get blocked, the portal vein that supplies the blood to the parts of the body, the digestive system. And when that got blocked, um, I guess Allah wanted to give him life, because people lose their lives at that point. But Allah wanted to give him life. And what happened was that a whole host of varicose veins grew inside his digestive system, which managed to supply blood to his digestive organs. So though the main portal vein was blocked, you know, Allah in His mercy gave him this relief that the blood would flow into all his other organs. But the thing is that nobody knew about this. After his accident in 1987, when he lost his arm, one of the doctors that was looking after him found that his blood results, especially his bilirubin and his all his en- enzymes were very high. So he started to do a search whereby he found that, there was a mass of these blood vessels that had grown on his liver. At the first point, they thought it was a cancer, that it was a tumor, and he was going to do a biopsy. But just before the biopsy, he stopped himself when he realized that this was a mass of blood vessels, and
Wow. SubhanAllah.
were he to even prick that,
Would
he
have
would have bled to death
hemorrhage, yeah.
instantly. Yeah. So from that time on until his second accident, these varices that had grown now were growing in his esophagus. And there came a time when these would start bursting, and he would an
On the blood.
incident happened where he started spewing out blood from his insides. So now what they had to do was every 6 months they would have to go in and ban these varices so that they would not grow. Unfortunately, they kept growing. He had to go through surgeries, a huge big surgery, for taking away, bypassing his splenic vein into his vena cava and all that. But nothing really happened. This was there and it was going to stay. After his
So,
second accident, the one thing that he wanted most was to be able to come home and to be with family. By this time now, he had been a very active member of the community with the IEB, with the community, the Jamaat as well. At
mhm.
this point now, he had to leave everything, and all he wanted was be home with his family, concentrate on being better. All the therapists that worked with him found him to be very, very positive and always wanting to get better, always wanting to make himself better. Unfortunately, he never could, walk by himself until, he passed away, or could he have a meal by himself or drink a glass of water by himself until he passed
Wow.
away.
I just want to concentrate on the effect that had on you and the children, because I think a lot of the times we obviously we see what's happening to the person who is affecting, but we don't think about the carer and how it affects the carer and their families. So can you just talk a little bit about your journey through all of this and how you managed? Because obviously you were still working, you had 3 children, and you had a husband who you were trying to take care of as well, and going to the hospital and being with him. Can you just talk a
So
little bit about that?
I the thing is that when you're going through things like that, you don't really think. Your
Mm,
adrenaline pumps. Things have
yeah.
got to get done. Things have got to be, taken care of. That's all that matters. So whether, because the last year of his life, again, because of all these, things, this illness that he had, what ended up happening was that his bile duct would get blocked, and his bile duct would get blocked. He would get jaundiced. Once he got jaundiced, I would have to take him to the hospital, and then they would take him to, they would put in shunts. Now, these shunts that they put in, I'm sorry, not shunts, stents. They put these stents in the bile duct so that the bilirubin would flow. In his case, the bilirubin was so sludgy, the bile was so sludgy that these stents would not take. They tried with one stent, they tried with two stents, they tried with, um, reversible, movable stents. They tried everything, but every 10, 15 days, he would get, jaundiced, and I would take him to the hospital. While doing that, I was still working. So, like I said, work had to be done. The children had to take care of themselves, and believe it or not, sometimes a lot of it, not even sometimes, a lot of times, I know and I think I didn't take care of my children. They grew up. they became adults overnight because they knew mom was not going to be around. She was busy with that. I had a disabled husband who was sick. So not only that he was sick, but he was disabled. He couldn't take care of himself in the hospital. The nurses would do all they could, but there were only certain things that they could help him with. I had to be there. A lot of times I would go to work at like 4 o'clock in the morning and try and catch up with my work at, and it was good. The people that I worked with were very good. They were very sympathetic and they allowed me to do that. And I would get all my reports ready, and because I was working in a laboratory, and by that time I was in customer service, and I would have to print up reports for the doctors, do all that. By 8 o'clock, when people were coming into work, all my work was done, and I would head on to the hospital because there would be appointments, there would be doctors to see, there was, trips to be taken to another hospital for the stenting to take place. But you don't think, you just do it. That's it. Yes, a lot of disorientation, because a lot of times I would check and think I needed meat, and I would go and buy a whole load of meat, and I'd come home to see that the freezer was full of meat. So I was disoriented, and yes, but and again, it was the adrenaline pumping. I don't think it ever stopped until we lost him. So
I just want to concentrate a little bit on this, because I think, when you lose someone, obviously you're dealing with the grief of that loss. But then, like you're saying, with you, it's like there was also that the adrenaline rush had gone. There was that void of not only not having a spouse, but the void of, what do I do now? Because I've spent so long just taking care of him. And then also maybe a little bit of guilt as well, from the relief of not having to do so much anymore.
So it was around the 3rd or 4th of Muharram, and he was in the hospital. And just a month before that, during the month of Zilhajj, was when the doctor had called me and asked me, what were my final instructions for my husband. And I'm like, what do you mean? What is it that you want to know? And her question was, there's something called DNR. I had never even known that there was something called DNR, do not resuscitate. And she explained to me, and I said, I would have to talk to my, you know, I don't know what Islam says about DNR. Are we allowed to do that, or should I? And then she explained how he would have been put on, have to be put on machines and all that. So with all consideration, and especially because my father-in-law was still there as well, I would have to talk to him, talk to my children. And so then we decided that we would not put the DNR for him, because that was the best thing possible. And a month later, on the 3rd or 4th of Muharram, was when the doctor called me and said that he had reached the end of his rope and he needed to be either put in a palliative care unit or taken home. And because he was always anxious about coming home, we decided to bring him home for the rest of whatever time he had left. And we brought him home, and Alhamdulillah, I think that was one of the best things that we did, because we all got to be around him, do things for him, pray, recite du'as, whatever we wanted to, and in our own ways say goodbye.
How long was he with you at home?
Another month. On the 3rd of Safar, he passed away. So another whole month he was at home. Um, but and while he was home, there were times when I would take long walks, just to clear my head, and I would pray to God at that time, because I couldn't bear to see him.
I'm so sorry. I know this is really, really difficult for you.
But it wasn't that I was asking that he be taken away from me. That was not why I hated to see him suffer in those last days. It's a very difficult time. And we wanted things to be easy for him. And I kept praying, God, make it easy for him. But I remember the time when he passed away and we came home from the funeral, and there was an emptiness in this house. Everybody was there. Everybody had come. But the most important person was missing. And it felt like after that, I had been doing all these things, but now there was nothing to do. There really wasn't nothing to do. I didn't know what to spend my time on.
And I'm sure at that time it must have been very, very difficult to focus as well.
It was for the longest time, believe it or not.
Yeah.
I thought it wouldn't be that, it wouldn't take that long. Maybe, in a year or 2 years, maybe I'll do the things that I want to do. Maybe I'll go back to school. Maybe I'll do this. Maybe I'll do this. But I never could really ever focus on anything, I just went on. Life went on and on. And I busied myself with community work, doing things at the mosque, taking part in for the longest time. I don't think I ever really.
Sorry, Jamila, we lost your mic system. Just could you just sorry?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can. Sorry.
Yeah.
It took a long time, and again, I think a lot of it is because the downer that you feel once the adrenaline rush is over is really difficult to get past. And I think it's not just if you can even think of it from something very small, like when you're doing some sort of project or you've got a deadline, the adrenaline rush keeps you going, but then the downer that you feel after that adrenaline rush really, really hits home. And it's if you don't realize what that is, it makes it very, very difficult to cope with. Jamila, can you hear me?
No, sorry, I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry, and I'm
okay.
Gone.
Your picture's gone. It's fine. Inshallah, you should come back. We can hear you.
Okay, let me just do
Are
it
you
one
okay?
more time. So sorry. Shall I?
No problem. I think the connection's really bad. Yeah, as I was saying, it's whenever we go through this adrenaline rush that we have, whether it's as carers, whether it's a deadline that we're meeting, whether it's some sort of project we're working on or something, the adrenaline keeps you going, and you'll stay up nights and you'll do what needs to be done, and you don't think about how tired you are. But once that adrenaline rush goes, the downer that you feel it's crazy, and not recognizing that it really makes it difficult to cope with. So I think that's a huge learning that we should take on board.
Yeah.
Moving forward, obviously it took you a while to get not past it, but to be able to cope with not having your late husband in your life, but also keeping his legacy alive was beautiful. I think obviously you did a lot there, and that's amazing. How did it impact your children? If we can just talk about that a little bit.
It's a bit difficult.
Yeah,
I think
it is. I'm sure.
think about it, and
Yeah, no, I'm sure. I'm happy
to tell you that I'm happy that they have turned out to be the most wonderful children in the world. I'll tell you, without having had two parents look after them in having their needs met in the way they needed them to be met, I don't think we were able to do them from both of us. But I think it is the blessings of Allah that they've all turned out to be great, and I'm proud of all three of them.
Alhamdulillah. And I'm sure part of who they are is because what they've been through, and that's what made them who they are, and that's amazing.
It has impacted all three of them in their lives, and I see it in a lot of ways too. But that's it's their life, and I'd rather when they get.
And again, God doesn't give you what you can't handle, right? So with the that there must, God was there by their side as well.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
No problem.
You're cutting.
So moving forward, can you hear me?
Yes.
Moving forward, I want to talk about, if you're comfortable talking about it, actually, you're getting to a stage where you're thinking of remarrying and moving forward with that, and how
So,
you thought about that and where that came from and how it transpired.
so the thought of remarrying didn't really cross my mind. It did cross my mind. I would be lying if I say it didn't, but I really wasn't interested. I had one wonderful husband that I had in my life for 25 plus years. And I know that we had a very good marriage. We both cared for each other very deeply. And, there were times I know that he would ask me, how come, you spend so much time looking after me? And I would tell him, wouldn't you have done the same for me, if the roles were reversed? I said, I know it for sure that you would have done the same for me. God has given me a chance to do this, and I'm happy. So don't ever feel that. So I think, we had a very happy marriage. And so I wasn't even looking for anything. Yes, friends asked, people asked. Actually, people were scared to ask me, to tell you the truth. They wouldn't broach the subject to me. They think she's going to eat our head off if we ever bring this to her. So I don't think anybody ever, brought it.
But I think as a community, one of the things that is quite sad is, when a man loses his wife, he's encouraged to remarry. Whereas when a woman loses her husband, it's not sort of looked down upon when she says that she may want to remarry or something like that. And I'm just wondering whether you felt that or anything like that.
I guess at the back of your mind, it's always there as well. That stigma that we've all grown up with. That for a woman who is widowed to get remarried, maybe it might not be. It's kind of a stigma that I think that has been. Maybe it's changing now. I hope it does. And for the future generations, I do hope that this changes. Because yes, a part of it was maybe that, but I really didn't think. I wasn't looking. I never ever thought about it until a good Samaritan, a good friend decided that she wanted to do some good in this world. So she knew Murtaza well, and he had lost his wife a year and a half before. And he couldn't stand being alone. I think that was one of the biggest things that he was going through, was how can I live my life alone, being alone like this. It's been 1.5 years and I can't live, like this. So he confided in her that he would like to remarry. And she looked around and decided she would come to me and ask me, and which she took away my sleep for a few nights there. I'm like, what? You must be joking, really? No, I don't think so. But giving it more thought, talking first of all to my children, and I don't talk to anybody else, about these things except my children first of all, because I think that they are in a position to guide me more than anybody else, because they have seen more of me. They have seen more of what my troubles have been, of what my anxieties, whatever it is that I have been through. I think my children have lived through those with me through thick and thin, and they know me well. And they all came and said, why not? I mean, why would you say no? What is the matter with you? Why are you, not taking this step? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to do it. The simple answer was, I don't want to do it. It's not a good enough reason. If there is somebody out there who wants to get married to you, then, it is Allah's this thing that you should think about it and take the step for a better future for yourself as well. For how long are you going to live to keep the light burning in your bedroom, doing puzzles in the middle of the night. And that's what I did, because after Mahmoud passed away, was I couldn't sleep all night long, and I was afraid of sleeping in the dark, and I would keep the light on and work on Sudoku or any puzzles. In fact, there was a time when one of my kids would remark, like, you've replaced dad with junk on your bed, like, you've got everything under the sun on the other side of the bed. What are you planning to do? So yeah, I took the big step of saying yes, and I did it on the 23rd night of Maha Ramadan. I had gone to before he had even proposed. I had decided I had to take this trip to Iraq for the ziyarat of Abu Abdullah, and I wanted to be in the haram of Imam Ali and Masjid Kufa on the 19th and the 21st, 23rd nights of Maha Ramadan. And I did my amals, and on the 23rd night, after doing all my amals and Joshin Kabir, I stood out on the roadside in front of the haram of Imam Hussein, from where I could see the dari of Abu Abdullah. And I said Bismillah to him to take the step to getting married.
MashaAllah, that is so beautiful. That's amazing. How many years after the passing of your late husband did you get married?
Sorry?
How many years after?
15 years.
15 years. So you'd actually spent 15 years on your own. So it must have been quite tough now to start a relationship with someone else in your life who is totally different to your husband.
It is different, and there's, again, to everything there is pros and cons. Now getting used to somebody is not easy, because you're also getting older, right? When you're younger, sometimes it's easier to change and do things. But when you're getting older, you're very set in your ways, especially when you've been living alone for 15 years. You're set in your ways. You don't cook. Yeah, I don't cook. I didn't cook, and I told him that I don't cook. But so many things, little things, little habits. So you have to learn how to get used to it, used to each other. But I think with everything, the pros of having somebody, a companion in your life, makes a big difference. I didn't realize how much I had missed a companion in my life until I got married again. I didn't realize what the joys of traveling with a companion would be until I remarried again. I didn't realize the joys of sitting down to a meal and eating together, or even little things like watching TV, just things, a drive, anything. It means so much now that you have somebody to share it with you, would laugh, uh, cry, whatever.
Yeah, no,
You share so much.
that's beautiful, and I think it's important to recognize that it's something that both men and women need, and it should be something that should be encouraged by the community. Just to finish off with, if I can ask you, with everything that you've been through, what advice would you like to give to the listeners that you think, if someone had told you this, it would have helped, or something that you've learned on your journey which you'd like to share with the listeners?
Okay. So, you know what, with all this that went on, I know I'd written something down, but let me just look for it. So, some of the things that I learned was, one of the things that my life was sort of on an autopilot. I had no control over anything. Everything ran on its own. Allah was the master of running everything. There was not a day, not a second, not a minute in my life when I felt, you know, I could make decisions, or yes, decisions you can make, but there's an a part where there is no control. It's not in your hands. Whatever we went through in my life with my husband, I know that there was a being, there is Allah that was controlling everything. I don't think I had any part of doing that. Keeping that faith, having that patience, um, you can go through life, getting frustrated. And yes, I was was frustrated and have been frustrated. And I know a lot of times, you know, you can look back and, you know, say that you were not, but you are frustrated. And you, but what did it end up to be? Nothing, right? What did that frustration do? It didn't give me anything. I had to live I had to live the life that was given to me, and that is still given to me. I have to live it in the best way possible. I cannot shun it. I cannot say no, I'm not going to do it this way because, you know, that's not how it's done. It's not. There is a life. Allah has said you lead it in the best way possible for my sake, if for nobody else's sake.
So I suppose what you're saying is don't fight it. Know that God's in control, and just go along with that and make the most of that life, because God, in His wisdom, has given it to you.
That's right. He knows. I mean, what do we know? And He, in His wisdom, knows what is best for us. One of the other things that I wanted to say was that, like, you know, how we continued doing things in His name in a little way, because we felt that He had a passion. And I think more than anybody else, I feel, you know, if that passion of His would result in even one person becoming a better Muslim, a better Shia, a better person out there, why not? Why, you know, why stop yourself? Move ahead with it, you know. So the struggles are there. I don't think that those are these struggles are what should hold people back in doing the things that they want to do. And
I think that's a beautiful lesson, because I think a lot of the times we get so caught up in the loss that we don't remember the life that they led, and try to sort of live that, continue that life of theirs, the lessons that they taught us being in our life.
I mean, he fought all his life for, you know, the betterment, the betterment of the children, the betterment of the community. And I could have had, you know, thrown my hands in the air and said, I don't have the strength, I don't have the energy. So if one didn't work out, I moved to another, mother and daughter. And mother and daughter, okay, the daughter said, now we're tired of traveling with our mothers. We don't want to do this anymore. We're doing it for the women. And I feel that even if one person out there learns something and moves on with their life, you know, I think, you know, then I couldn't ask for anything. And one more thing that I just wanted to add, and maybe I didn't mention in all this, I even took a trip to Syria. My children were there, and they wanted me to go and study Arabic there. And I did take, because, you know, I thought maybe that's one of the things that, you know, I would like to do. The unfortunate part, well, fortunate around, I can't say, because I couldn't stay long there. I would have to come back. I kept coming back every 3 months because I have elderly parents who I still take care of right now. And I would stay there for 3 months, come back, visit with them for a couple of months, go back again for 3 months. And I did a whole host of those trips there. Um, yes, you know, again, like I said, you do what you want to do. Don't hold yourself back. But then there are, Allah gives you other responsibilities sometimes. And like I said, if I didn't have my husband to look after, I still have my parents, and I still look after them. And thank Allah for Murtaza coming into my life, for he helps me look after them as well. So
That's beautiful. And I think a lot of the times we strive to do things that we think God wants from us, so like learn Arabic, like do courses, like go to Hosa. But maybe God actually just wants us to take responsibility in different ways and do different things, and that's what He sends towards us by, you know, allowing us to take care of someone in our lives that needs us. And I think recognizing that that is serving Allah is really, really important as well.
yeah,
Yeah, it's like mothers who have young children. You know, it's like I always tell them that you don't have to worry that you're not doing as much ibadah, because you know what? Just bringing up your children is ibadah. So it's the same sort of principle when we're taking care of someone who needs us. That is ibadah as well, right? So yeah, no, that's beautiful. So thank you so very much for sharing your life story. If we can just take a minute just to recite Surah Fatiha for Maroom and all other Maroomeen, with the salawat, please. If you can recite a Surah Fatiha for them, please. Thank you very, very much for sharing your life with us and being so open and giving us your advice and what you've learned from your life. It's been very, very powerful. Thank you so much.
For having me. Thank you for the.
Inshallah.
Hope to see you next year for camp.
Inshallah, inshallah.
Let's hope this COVID goes away so we can start going back to our.
Inshallah, yeah. I'm missing it this year. Inshallah. Thank you everyone for joining us on Real Talk. Inshallah, next week will be the last week where we will be talking to Memunabai Azim on her journey where she loses her spouse and brings up her children on her own and how she manages to do that. So please join us next week, inshallah, with Memunabai Azim on Real Talk. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.